So it's JP poll time, and we've got significant movement in the JP poll this week. I know that we are going to be inundated with foolishness once we post this later tonight. So what I figured we would do, so I don't have to answer the same question 47 times, is I'm going to do something here. Bear with me for about 30 seconds, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip what I'm about to say, and I'm going to respond to every troll on every social platform with this video. Here's how it's going to sound. Colin, we can put this in the regular video too. This is a power rating. It is not a ranking. If you are of the Danny Cannell mold and you come at me and you say, how could you advocate for this? Teams deserve to be higher. They do if you're ranking teams. I'm not ranking them. If I were ranking them, there are teams I don't have in my top 10 that I would put in the top 10. I don't have Kansas in our top 25. If I were an AP voter, I'd have Kansas in the top 20 because their merit deserves them to be there. That is not what this is. All this is, and I mean all period, this period is who would be favored against who tomorrow. If you want to come at me and say, that's no way to determine how the playoffs should work, you're right. I'm not advocating for this to determine anything along those lines. I am simply performing an exercise based on our model and what it thinks about who would be favored against who tomorrow. If you want to yell at me, computers shouldn't decide championships in college football. They don't. I'm not advocating for that. All this is who we think would be favored against who according to our model tomorrow. I hope I haven't been unclear. Let's get to the top 25. There are some new entrants here. For the first time in a couple of weeks, Oregon shows back up at number 25. We've got NC State there. We're lower on NC State than the AP, yet I just picked them to beat Clemson outright, so make sense of that what you will. Minnesota 23, LSU 22, and we've got Baylor there at 21. Minnesota is in this thing, I believe, for the first time this year, so they are going in the right direction. Okay, let's get to the top 20, because here's where we've got some pretty significant movement this week. And you got to remember, if you see a team move down, they may not have been bumped. They may have just had some other teams rate higher, and therefore they had to slide down by default. The number 20 team in the country is Kansas State. And I'm going to tell you why they rose all the way from being unranked to number 20. The model was flat out underestimating quarterback play for them. Because we've got a book on Adrian Martinez. Like we've got a player profile on him. What we underestimated was how much a different environment would positively impact his play, and therefore how much his positive play would impact that team. So Kansas State is just flat out better than we had them pegged for the first couple of weeks of the year. Or maybe they always were that, and the model is just slow on the uptick. It has happened before. Texas A&M is still 19. What does that mean? It means we think there are about 18 teams in the country our model would favor against them tomorrow, and it has nothing to do with whether they lost to App State, and it has nothing to do with the coin flip game last week. That's all that matters. Kentucky is at 18. We're going to see them in person this Saturday. Florida State, a big mover at 17. Florida State, let me tell you why the model bumped them up, or why I think the model bumped them up. Last week they played Boston College. They were favored by somewhere between 17 and 20, depending on when you bet the game. And they handled Boston College, disposed of them quite easily. Some people discount that because they look, and the human side of you says, why should I reward you for beating a bad team? The reason you should is because not every good team, or good team that you think is good, at least beats bad teams when they're supposed to. So you should reward them. You reward teams for winning really big games close. You also should reward them for beating bad teams soundly. So we did with Florida State. Cincinnati's still just lurking around at number 16. Here we go, top 15 time. Mississippi State is still number 15. The model's been consistent on them all year. They've got a loss. They lost to LSU. They are favored by 3.5 or 4 points now this weekend against Texas A&M. That opened at 1.5 or 2, and it's already crossed 3. So Mississippi State, we got on them at 2 the other night. There's a reason I bet that on Sunday night, and I told you to do the same. I suspected it would cross 3. It now has, and it's at 4. Some places had 4.5 earlier today. Point being, that's a really good team. They're an underrated team. The odds makers, pretty much all the advanced metrics guys out there kind of agree with us on Mississippi State. We've been on them pretty high all year. Arkansas had a slight drop, and they didn't really, I think we dropped them 0.5 point in the model, so I told you there was going to be no real adjustment. I mean, Arkansas just lost to A&M. We still got Arkansas above A&M because we would favor them tomorrow on a neutral field again against A&M. Doesn't matter in terms of the win-loss column, just for this simple exercise, that's where they are. Ole Miss, tough team to get a read on because they haven't played anyone. Now they'll play someone this weekend. So Ole Miss, Kentucky, it's one of the reasons we're going to the game. It's so attractive because we get two of our top 20 teams there playing against each other. Oklahoma State at 12, they're going to play Baylor this week. Texas at number 11. Now that stands out, I know. Let me explain why Texas is at 11, even though they've got 2 losses now. The Texas team that we have at 11 is the Texas team with Quinn Ewers, because he gets assumed reinserted back into the lineup this week. The model just thinks with Quinn Ewers, they're an undefeated team right now. And the caliber team they are now and moving forward, which is what this is used for, that's where they view them. So we couldn't care less they have 2 losses because this is not an AP ranking. Top 10 time. Let's roll right into the top 10, shall we? USC, we didn't have to adjust them at all because we didn't have them as high as everyone else. So you watched them nearly lose to Oregon State. It wasn't shocking to us. We've got them pretty much pegged where we want them. Clemson got taken to overtime against Wake. That's what we would expect. We didn't knock them down at all because we already had them at 9, so there's no punishment. Plus, they won the game. So even in the AP world, why would you punish a team if they win a game? Oklahoma's the team that fell a little bit here because, well, they lost to Kansas State, and they kind of got handled by Kansas State. Now, we still think they're a top 10 team. We don't think that that's anything that you're going to look back on at the end of the year and say, that was the start of a big slide for Oklahoma. But they've got a big, crucial game on the road against TCU this week. We do not think TCU is a top 25 team right now in the power rating world. But keep in mind, I'm going to give you some stats to fully articulate for you how jammed up all these teams are past number 3. So it doesn't really matter that TCU is like number 29 or 30 for us, because if you go into their building, you get the kind of point spread you have with Oklahoma TCU, which I think is 5 or something like that. So everyone's looking ahead to Red River next week. No. Texas has got West Virginia this week. Oklahoma's got TCU. Those are both losable games. Penn State is still at 7. Utah's at 6. Now, I'm going to say what some of you are thinking, then I'm going to address it in a second. Some of you are looking at Penn State at 7 or Utah at 6, and you're saying things like, Penn State's not a top 7 team. Utah's not a top 7 team. Colin, you can go ahead and roll to the top 5 because I'm going to say the same thing here. We've got at number 5, Tennessee. At number 4 is Michigan. And I can hear some of you right now saying the same sort of thing. Tennessee's not a top 5 team. Michigan's not a top 5 team. What does top 5 mean? You sometimes got this very, very baked in idea of a generic top 5 team. What does that phrase, top 5 caliber, normally mean? And you got kind of the value of a team ascribed to what you think is top 5 caliber. That's not how you rate teams, though. You rate teams in the given year that they exist, in the current climate they exist. So right now, I would ask you this. If you scoff at Michigan or Tennessee being up there, that means you think there's another team that's clearly better than them and would clearly be favored against them if they played tomorrow. That doesn't exist right now is what I'm telling you. So you see, we got a new number 1, by the way. Bama, our model put back at number 1. Georgia's number 2. Ohio State's number 3. I want to tell you how wide the gap is in this sport right now as the model sees it. So, Colin, do me a favor. Throw number 1 through 5 up again because I want people to be – well, there you go. That works too. So, number 1's Alabama, number 2 is Georgia, number 3 is Ohio State. The gap between Alabama and Ohio State, 1 through 3, is 2.5 points. So, essentially, you've got equal teams there. There is less than a field goal difference between the top 3. The gap between 3 and 4, or Ohio State and Michigan, is 14 points, 2 touchdowns. Now get this. The gap between 3 and 4 is 2 touchdowns. The gap between 4 and 25 is 7 points. So the gap between 4 and 25 is half as much as the gap between 4 and 3. That is called tiers. That's called a tier 1, which is those 3 teams at the top, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, and then you got a very, very big drop-off, and then you've got this mashup of teams, like 21 or 22, 23 teams that are within a touchdown of each other on a neutral field. So you see, when some of you want to argue with me that number 18 should be ahead of number 13, number 21 should be ahead of number 19, it's all semantics. Even the model admits, if it could talk, it would say, it's all semantics because they're basically the same team. Thank you, model. They're basically the same team. And I agree with the model, you know. It's the model segment, not mine. So I was mildly surprised to see Bama back at number 1, but then, I mean, you know, Georgia did what they did against Kent State. I don't think it's a big deal at all, but, you know, these computers, they're a little more heartless than I am. So I can't wait. I cannot wait for the well-reasoned and logic-based comments and responses to what we just put out. I will take another sip out of the chalice in advance. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me, that's how we keep this entire thing free.